That was a long weekend. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek Deep Thoughts Thin Coats with me, Phil the Glacial Geek. Today, I am going to be, hobby-wise, I'm going to be painting up something a little different than I've been doing recently. I'm going to be painting up Watchmaster Artemis here. I've had him primed for a long time, so it's about time he finally got some paint on him. We're just going to be working on the armor a bit, doing some dry brushing to bring out my method for painting black, which I guess is a pretty good way to show it up. We're going to be using some of the Army Painter paints. We're going to do a dry brush of Dungeon Gray, and then we'll do a dry brush of Wolf Gray, and then we'll go from there and see how it looks. And then what we'll probably do is, once that's all dried, probably not happen on this, but then what I do is I wash it all down with a dark wash. So I'll do the dark tone wash on it, then I'll block in the other colors, and then give another wash of dark tone, and it usually comes out really well. I like the way it looks. Gives it a black. It looks black, but it has dimension, because like the Wolf Gray gives it a nice blue tone to it, and the dry brushing gives it some tone, and then you just wash over it twice with the wash, and it gives it a nice dark. It brings everything back down, brings it black, but gives it dimension, which is sometimes hard to do when you're dealing with black. So that's what we're going to be doing hobby-wise. As far as talking about today, the topic I'm going to be talking about is actually kind of going over my tournament experience this last weekend at Warzone Giga Bites, and kind of talking about my experience with the Genestealer Cult for the first time, taking them out in a competitive scene. So that was a ton of fun. It was a really interesting experience, so I kind of want to go over that. So let's start talking about it. First of all, I had a great time. The guys up there, the general staff that put on this, they also put on Warzone Atlanta. The guys who do this do Warzone Atlanta, and they put on a really fun tournament. A lot of great people. I think there was 64 people there. That it was just a ton of fun. I had a great time. Met and saw a lot of people that I've known before. A lot of fun people, and I had 5 incredibly fun rounds of tournament play at there, and it was a really good experience. A lot of fun. Like I said, I ended up having 2 wins, 2 losses, and a tie. So I kind of want to go over first. I'm going to go over the games, how I did in them with against my opponents, and then kind of go over once we do that, kind of give my initial experience with the Genestealer Cult in a competitive scene. So the first game I got matched up against Eldari. So it was a combined Eldar and Dark Eldar lists. It had 4 flyers, and it had 2 giant squads of grotesques, along with a couple, characters supporting them. And I'm not gonna lie, at first when I saw that list, I knew I was gonna have trouble. I just saw, the units they had there, and I looked at it and I was like, so this entire list consisted of essentially things that I couldn't charge with the flyers, and things that I didn't want to charge with the grotesques. So I knew right off the bat that it was going to be a tough day for me. It was going to be a tough game for me. That everything would have to kind of go my way for it to work out. And it didn't. I got my butt kicked pretty substantially. I think turn 3 I got tabled. It was just I couldn't handle it. Like, he had the flyers, he had the big, large squads of the grotesques, and I just couldn't do anything. So I had my list consisted of. I guess I should talk over my list so you can understand why I was having a hard time. So I ran a pure Genestealer Cult, and I had pure Genestealer Cult, and it consisted of a brigade and a battalion and a vanguard. In those detachments, I had the brigade. Everything was Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. The brigade consisted of a patriarch. It had a patriarch. It had a magus and a primus, I believe. Then I had a Kellermorph, I had a Clamavis, and I had a Sanctus. Then for the troop choices, I had a 20-man squad of Acolytes with 5 Rock Saws and a Cult Icon. I then had a 10-man squad of Acolytes with hand flamers and no special weapons in them. And I then had 4 other 5-man squads of Acolytes that would consist 5-man squads of Acolytes that were just bare bones. So they just had their rending claws and pistols. I had my 3 fast attacks were a 4-man squad of the jackals, so the bikers, and I had 2 of the armored sentinels with las cannons. I then had, for heavy support, I had 3-man heavy weapons squads, Brood Brother heavy weapons teams with mortars, all of them. Then for the brigade, or for the battalion, that was brigade. The battalion, I had another Patriarch, I had a Jackal Alphys, and just the Jackal Alphys. I think that was it for the HQs there. Then I had 3 10-man Brood Brother squads. One had 2 flamers, one had grenade launcher, and one was just regular las guns on them. I had, and then I had, that was it for that. And then for the Vanguard, I had an Abominant. I had a 9-man squad of Aberrants with picks, and one was a Hypermorph with a improvised heavy weapon. I had another second Kellermorph, and I had a Clamavis. So it was a pretty good list. I was pretty excited with everything they had there. There's a potential for a lot of damage with them, a lot of potential for them to be really strong and really bring the punch when I needed them to. So that was the forces that I had going with me. So going into this scene, these 2 giant squads of grotesques that are just brutal in combat, and seeing the 4 flyers, I knew I was going to have trouble. So we start playing. I managed to mentally onslaught one of the flyers out of the sky. The rest of the time, it either got denied, didn't go off, or stopped wounding after like a few wounds. Then I managed to charge my Aberrants into a grotesque squad. He used this mask power that he has that makes them fight last, and he proceeded to just like wipe me off the table. I dropped my bikes down in front of him, and he forewarned them and shot 3 of them off the table. I ran my 20-man Acolyte squad into grotesque. I think I killed 2, and then he killed the rest. I tried to flame with the second squad, and he just killed him, and he just proceeded to just wipe them out. He just kept them together, walking together, the 20 grotesque going up. Then they kind of split off and just took care of different things. And like I said, by the bottom of turn 3, I was pretty much done for. I knew it was going to be a tough match going in. I really didn't think I had much of a chance, and sure enough, I didn't. And it was my opponent was super fun, super nice, super great guy, and we just had a really good time. But I mean, I got my butt kicked, really handed to me. And I'll kind of get back to that in a bit after I kind of go over all the different battles that I had. So that was a bit rough. Game 2, I played against Ultramarines. So I went up against, it had Gilliman, it had 6-man aggressor squad. He had 2 Predators and Cronus. He also had a couple scouts. He had Tellian, a bunch of scout squads, Tellian, and he had, he had a Dorado, and he had a Thunderfire cannon. This game was the game that I ended up with the tie. It was a really hard-fought match. I kept the pressure on him, which was awesome, because right off the bat, he didn't want to come out with all of my, like half my army would be in Deep Strike, and then the rest were all in Blip, so he really didn't know where I was going to be coming from. And being able to keep that pressure on him really worked really well in my favor, because what it meant was he couldn't really come out of his deployment zone until I came in, and then once I came in, I was able to keep wave upon wave of these Genestealers coming at him, and it just kept the pressure on him to the point that he couldn't really leave his deployment zone. So I was able to get the points that I needed, but the way that the Warzone battle goes, I was able to win on the primary objectives, but The secondaries were kill points, and my army just bleeds kill points, especially Warzone kill points, because you had extra points for characters, and I had, I think, 12 characters all told, including all of everyone there. So it was a really fun, hard-fought game. Really great guy. Had a blast and really fought it out at the end, and it came to exactly a tie, 15-15 tie, which was fun. The first game, he got max points, I got 0 points. So that was kind of a brutal match, like I said. So at this point, I'm 1 tie, 1 win. Go into the third match, and I play against another pure Genestealer Cult matchup. We had very similar dispositions with our forces, and it just came down to kind of who could manage to get the most out of everything that we did. So, we drop in, and essentially it was just like an ebb and flow between the two of us. Like, he would drop stuff in and wipe my guys, I would drop stuff in and wipe his guys, and it just kept going back and forth. And there was like one turn that I managed to get hold more objectives, because basically we just kept holding the same amount of objectives when you're trying to get it. And I had one turn when I could hold just enough to get 2 more points than he did, and pulled out like a very narrow victory. Another great, fun, super fun opponent that we just had a really great time playing, and so I managed the victory there, but had a great time. So at the end of day 1, I was 1-1-1, and feeling pretty good. I had a lot of fun. Really, really awesome opponents doing, and the Genestealer Cult were difficult. I'm not gonna lie. I was very happy that I was able to get to pretty far along in all of the matches that we played there, but there's a lot to keep in mind when you're playing them. There's a lot of models to move, and they're intricately moved, so you're not just like marching them up the board. You're dropping them, looking for spaces to move them, looking for ways to keep the bubbles working so that you've got your synergies working. And they were a way more mentally taxing army to play, especially in a timed competitive event, than were my Dark Angels previously. The Dark Angels, I knew what I would do with them, and I'm not sure whether it comes down to the actual army taking more brain power to operate, or whether or not it was the reality of me just not having played them as much as I played my Dark Angels. I mean, I played the Dark Angels, a billion times, that I know them back and forth and inside and out, so that this situation, trying to go forward with them, I knew that I was going to be... It was going to be partly a learning experience to understand it, but I was very happy that I was able. I didn't feel like I was like holding up my opponent. I felt like the games kind of went to a pretty natural conclusion. It didn't go to full 7 rounds, but they didn't feel like they needed to. My opponents, they may be wrong. I guess you would have to ask them. But in my interactions with them, they didn't seem upset at any kind of delays. The Genestealer Cult are they're a tough nut to come up against if you haven't played them a lot, because they've got so many different things that they do specifically for only Genestealer Cult that it's hard to figure it out. So it's like you screen out for 9-inch deep strike, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm going to spend the CP and come in 3 inches away, and it's like, okay, well, there you go. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go 9 inches away here, but then I'm also going to move D6 inches closer. Oh, and they also get +1 to charge on that first turn when they come in. Oh, they also get +1 to charge when they're within within 6 inches of this guy. Oh, they get 1 inch extra charge if they're within 6 inches of this guy because of this guy's warlord trait. And I'm looking at this. I'm looking at my list, and I've got 5 guys with warlord traits between the CP that I spend with the 2 Vigilist detachments, giving them the field commanders, and then using the Brood Coven to give my Magus, my Primus warlord traits, as well as the Patriarch. So I've got 5 characters with warlord traits, all doing their own thing. All of these characters have their own buffs and auras, and this guy can do this stratagem for 0 CP, and it's tough to get your head wrapped around at first. And I mean, even as a player, it's hard for me to really get my brain wrapped around it and really understand it as well as I probably need to, let alone if a player who has never seen them before has run up against them in a tournament. But we had good times. I had a really good time with all 3 of my opponents. Really great guys, really a lot of fun. And even whether they were beating me, tying with me, or losing, we had a good time, and everyone was enjoying themselves, which is the entirety. That's the entire point. That's the main emphasis, especially with Warzone, because they put a lot of emphasis on sportsmanship. They put a lot of emphasis on painting. So the idea is for it to be a very congenial environment. It's not everyone, you bring tough lists. You bring lists that you want to win with, and that's what I did. But at the same time, the atmosphere is very supportive and a lot of fun. So we had a lot of really good time then. Day 2 comes along. The first list I run up against is 3 Bloodthirsters, Scarbrand, 3 squads of 9 Havocs, 9 Berserkers inside of Rhinos, Karn, and a Chaos Lord. Man, that was another tough matchup. And I looked at it and I thought, I can do some damage, but I knew that I was looking at this and I was like, he wants to do exactly what I want to do, which is just run into your face and punch things. So we set up and we went, and I think I ended up going first. And I kind of like kept the things that were on the table back in a corner so that I could try to get some as much distance as I could from his things before they could get into my face, so that I could get my reinforcements in there and kind of hold the table. When they finally drop in, I managed to take out a Bloodthirster with my 20-man squad of acolytes. I managed to take out, and then so that was the big thing that I got there. But my aberrants failed their charge. So did my abominant, and at that point he was able to just kite me away because he had a Bloodthirster they were trying to charge into. So he just kind of flew him 12 inches away, and he just kited me along until I ran out of CP eventually, and then charged in with a whole bunch of things to wipe them out because. We were talking about it, and he said, if you make that charge that when they first drop in, it's a whole nother game. I was looking for a 7-inch charge, and I rolled a 3. There's not much you can do about that. And it's, he said, my opponent even said, he's like, those guys make a charge in, it's a whole nother game. Whether you win it or not, who knows? Because then it comes down to how the dice go, how everything happens, because it's still a fight. But he's like, the second they missed that charge, I knew I had a pretty good chance. And it's true. At that point, a lot of the Genestealer Cult, the old way in the index, it came up to how lucky you were on those cult ambush rolls. And it became hard to really make a strategy with that because it really depended upon how good your dice rolls were, and even if you had the Primus that was coming in with them and you had his reroll, you're looking at 3 dice re-rolling to try to get those 5s or 6s. I had times when I got the best I got on all 6 dice, basically 3 dice, re-rolling all of them, and the best I got was like a 3, and those are the times and you look at that and you're like, well, it just wasn't meant to happen. With the new Genestealer Cult, you can plan things, like I said, because of the Abominants, the Aberrants having the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, they had +1 charge. The Abominant had the Field Commander Warlord trait from the Anointed Throng, giving them +1 inch again. So you're looking at a 7-inch charge, and on average on dice says you make that because 7's the most common dice roll you can get with 2d6, and on top of that you've got another half going higher. So odds are you make those rolls, and I just didn't. And then if that's the case, then c'est la vie. You know what I mean? That's how the game goes. That's how everything goes. You fail your 2-up invul save and your Archon on the first bolt pistol shot that comes your way, and it's like, what are you going to do about that? Nothing. So you just kind of have to play the game. That's why you play the game, and that's why I said to my opponent, I was like, that's why we play the game, and that's why we don't just sit down there, exchange our armies and go, all right, well, I think you win. You got to play it out. You got to play the game. So yeah, I lost pretty hard on that one, but I did get some points, so I didn't get shut out on that one, which is good. But again, I had a really great time. That was against Red Pal, actually. I think they have they just started up a podcast. Some of the guys there, I know he's part of that, so I will try to get the link in the description below for you can check that out and check them out, give them a hear. They're pretty cool, really good guys, a lot of fun and pretty good tactics. Daniel Hester is also, I think, is part of that, and he's, I think, second in ITC right now, or he's way up there, at least in the top 10. So anyway, that was the game 2 there. So at this point, I've got 2 losses, a win, and a tie. Going into my last game, and I run into Blood Angels along with Knights. So there's a Castellan, 2 Hellverns, and then a bunch of Blood Angels. And my army did very, very well. Not gonna lie, my army did very, very well. I managed Mental Onslaught didn't do much for me that turn for that game, but I did manage to mentally. I did manage to mind control his Castellan and shoot, and spread out a bunch of wounds all over all of his army, kind of like scattershot. And then I supercharged with this plasma and gave him 2 mortal wounds because of that. And then charged in with my 20-man Acolyte squad, got them with Might from Beyond. They had the Primus declared the Castellan as his preferred target, their meticulous planner target. And he was within 9 inches because I gave him the extra 3-inch aura for his thing. So I had my Rock Saws went in there, they were doing 3 attacks each. There's 5 of them there, so 15 attacks. Hitting on 2s because of the Primus. Rerolling 1s because of the Cult Icon. Wounding on 3s. Rerolling 1s because of the Primus's ability. And I managed to take down the Castellan in 1 round of combat without even rolling for the claws for the rest of the squad. It was just the saws. They just ran up there and just cut down the Castellan at the knees, and he fell over dead. So that was probably the tactical highlight of the weekend, being able to cut down a Castellan in 1 round of combat with my Acolytes. So it was fun to be able to do that. And they were brutal. I mean, the Acolytes consistently did a lot of work, unless they ran into a heavy counter. They did a lot of work for me over the weekend, and they were a lot of fun to use. Just this big squad of dude bros. But the thing is, like, at that point, it died. I tried to consolidate into some other units, but he just backed them out, and then just proceeded to just wipe them out with shooting. And that's what they do. I had a friend who described them very aptly as they hit like Genestealers and die like Guardsmen. So imagine if your entire army is just like T3, 5-up armor saves. They die very fast, and that was kind of my experience, was that I was removing models hand over fist, and it just came down to how many points and how much damage could I do early on to try to get myself into a position where it was too much for them to come back out and recover from. So I managed to win that game. So I ended up with, like I said, 2 wins, 2 losses, and a tie. As middle of the line as you could possibly get for a GT there, a 5-game GT. And I had a really great time. It was fun to be able to take out the models. I was painting models to like the very last moment when I had to throw everything together and meet up with my friend Marcus to drive up to Atlanta for the event. So I was glad to actually get them all done and get them out there and try them out. So it was a ton of fun, really great experience. Met a lot of really great people. Got to see a lot of people that I'd already known before, and just had a really, really good, fun time. My Genestealer Cult, man, they gave me a headache. I was mentally just pooped at the end of the weekend after running them. There is so much to keep in mind, so many rules and so many buffs and so many interactions and so many models, just so many models. I think I was running like 120 something models, which is probably more than twice as many as even my Dark Angels brigade that I was running, so many models, and trying to just wrap my head around all of that, it took a lot mentally to keep up with it. And after an entire weekend of playing them, it was exhausting. So I think what's going to happen is I've got to make some tweaks, because I've got Barnyard Brawl coming up. I think not this weekend, but next weekend. So I've got to get my stuff together and figure out what I'm going to do with them and try to get them out there, and see what I can do to help improve my ability to perform there. So I'm very happy with the first event out there getting an exactly middle of the road event result. And now I've just there's nowhere I could go down, but I'm going to try to be going up. My initial observance of the Genestealer Cult is that they're good, but they have harder counters to them than my Dark Angels. So with my Dark Angels, I knew that I didn't have the strongest Codex, I didn't have the strongest rules, but I never went into a battle feeling like I had no chance. Never felt it. And with I had ones where I felt better than others. I knew there were ones that I was going to have difficulty with, but I never felt like I was like it was just GG the second I saw the list. I did feel that way a little bit this tournament with my Genestealer Cult. That first matchup with 4 flyers and 2 giant squads of grotesques, when I saw that, I knew I was in trouble, and I didn't know if there was any possibility of me being able to stay on the board, and there wasn't. I ended up just getting my butt kicked. I just there were and looking back on it now, seeing how it went, seeing how the different units performed and what they did, I don't know how I could have played it any differently to have had any different a result. I think that was kind of the way it was going to be from the get-go. And that's tough to wrap my head around, to be able to run an army that has like a super hard counter like that. I'm used to Marines, which they're kind of like the everyman of armies. They make all-comer lists a lot more easily than other armies do, because they've got a lot of different weapons, a lot of different options that you can run with them. And that was something that I'm going to have to get used to, is that there may come times that I think the Genestealer Cult have harder counters, and there are lists out there that are, I think, that are going to be pretty popular, that are pretty hard counters. I think that you're going to see a lot of, I think the guy who ended up winning on battle points for the tournament, he had the seven Eldar flyers, and I think that you're going to see a lot of flyers out there because of these kind of lists that you're going to see out there with blocking knights movement wise, blocking movement, having pretty heavy board control, and then just the kind of DACA that these flyers can put out. It's pretty strong. So I think you're going to see a lot of them, and I think that you're going to see a lot of them because they also respond very well to hordes. So between Genestealer Cult and the Orcs, and even just guard hordes, just lots of guys, that's a pretty popular list build that's coming up, and the flyers do very well against it because they can't get bogged down like other armies can. They've got that innate -1 to hit because they're flying, and if they're Eldar, you're usually running them as LATOX, so they're -2 to hit outside of 12 inches, and it becomes very difficult. My Dark Angels at least had a lot of DACA and strong DACA that I could possibly overcome that deficit to be able to shoot them out of the sky, and I would often do that. But my Genestealer Cult just don't have the tools to do that. It's just not what they're going to do. That they're not what they're good at, and it's not what they're going to be able to really achieve very well. So I'm left with a situation where I have to understand that there are going to be matchups that I'm going to face that I'm going to have very little chance of winning, and I have to try to figure out ways of getting points from those. I think what I might have to try to do is kind of play along the lines, like at the LVO, the final table, where he lost his castle in turn 1 and had to find a way to win, and did. I think it's going to have a similar situation where, most of the time when I'm running my Genestealer Cult, what it is I have a board presence at first, which throws out some piddling shots, and then round 2 and 3 in come the main teeth of my list. They go in there and they try to punch things really hard and fast and try to get as much damage as they can before they die, and then hope that I can pull out the victory. I think I need to be a bit cagier. I think I need to be a bit more strategic in my deployments and in how I play my units, and what I charge, what I don't charge, when I drop them, putting units back up into Return to the Shadows, and play the objective game. I think ITC, I probably do a little bit better than I did in the Warzone missions, just because of the reality of the kill something, hold something thing. I'm gonna have a hard time killing more than my 28 units that are all T3 straight, 5-up armor saves. So I look at that and I go, yeah, I'm probably not going to be killing more than most of my opponents, but I could probably hold more. I've got a lot of board control with the list that I have, and a lot of it is objective secured because of them being, a lot of it being troops. So you put a 20-man blob in cover over there with a Patriarch. They're fearless. You got to try to get through them, and there are a lot of armies out there that have a lot of DACA that can do pretty well, because even las guns are wounding on 4s against these guys. But at the same time, there's ways of trying to pull it out that I think I have a better chance in ITC of getting points at least, and then hoping that I can try to place up higher. I look at lists like the one that Juice ran at Adepticon, and making it all the way to the final table with that. And it's an interesting build. I saw the list that Nick Rose ran at the Dallas G. I think it was the Dallas GT this last weekend. And I see the list that he had, and it's super strong and doing a lot of really cool stuff. And his is more of a shooty list, which is interesting because I look at the Codex, and shooty does not seem to be in my opinion, really the way to go. But he did really, really well. I think he won the GT with it. So I see all these things and I see the opportunities to really improve upon it. And going forward, I am hopeful, but at the same time, I know that these guys, they're not as OP as people really tend to think. I think a lot of people are reacting with like a knee-jerk reaction to things that are new and different. A lot of people talking about how the mental onslaught is broken. All tournament, I killed one model with it. One flyer in the first game. That was the only model that I actually killed full on with mental onslaught. I had a bunch of other ones that I tried, didn't do as well. They were either denied, I either failed the rolls, or they were able to roll equal to or lesser than my leadership. And I built a lot around it. I gave my warlord patriarch the +1 leadership. I had him drop in with the Clamavis. I'm looking at a base 12 leadership at that point. I think trying to get up to leadership 13 is difficult. You really have to put so much into making that happen that, they get a deny off, you're in trouble. You run into sisters, they've got a 4-up, a stratagem to have a 4-up deny. Same thing with the Corn with, they have a stratagem that they can put it up and on a 4+ it denies. That's not the kind of thing that you can really, build a strategy behind, because it takes so much. You have to get the power. You have to get the units into position. They have to cast the power successfully. It has to not be. Denied. Then you have to roll, and you have to hope that you don't get that 1. You roll that 1, your opponent rolls the 6. It's over. You know what I mean? Most of the times when I would use mental onslaught, I think the majority of times that I tried mental onslaught, it was either denied, either failed to get it off, or I did less wounds than I could have done with smite. Plain and simple. That's what it came down to. So it's, when it works and I can make a plane disappear, it's great. But when it doesn't work, I'm left out in the lurch, and now I have, my patriarch, I have my warlord now within 18 inches of whatever it is that I was trying to blow away with my mind. And that's a bad thing. That's a bad place to be. So if it's a knight, they're going to turn around and shoot you and then charge you and punch you in the face, because they can. If it's a tank, they're going to turn around and shoot you. If it's a flyer, they're going to, zoom around and get you again. And it's difficult to it's a great tool. Don't get me wrong. When it works, it's beautiful and it's a lot of fun. But when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's not the kind of thing that you can really base a strategy off of. You know what I mean? Unlike the Acolytes killed a Castellan in 1 round of combat. The Acolytes killed a Bloodthirster in 1 round of combat. The Acolytes did a number on a whole lot of different units. I think they killed Cronus. They killed a whole bunch of different things. And I mean, they were super effective and strong in what they did. And I love the Acolytes. They did such good work. And they were so strong and so powerful that honestly, they are a way better thing to base a strategy on than one psychic power that really requires a whole string of rolls to go well for it to go off. So, like I said, there's ways that you can have it there. You take the Locust for the -1. Nobody takes the Locust. It's not a very effective unit. That's not going to do you much. And if you put him in there within 3 inches if you get him within 3 inches of a knight, he's dead, and that's the throwing away points at that point. And if you're allying in Nids and you can cast the Horror, now you're hoping that you can cast 2 psychic powers that both go off, that both have characters, that both have your psychers in the position to cast them, and that they both go off effectively for your process to work. And that's just too much hoping and wishing for the dice to do what you want them to do to base a strategy on. Don't get me wrong, every time I have my Patriarch there, he's going to have that power, because when it works well, but it's not the kind of thing that you can really base a strategy on, especially since you only cast it once. It's not like Smite Spam where you can cast it as many times as you want. You get one shot at getting this per turn, and if it doesn't go off, you're stuck out there, and you better have a secondary list of ways to protect them, which is hard to do sometimes. So my experience with them this time around was that they were good. it's going to take a lot to really hone it in and really find my way with them. I think it's going to take a bit to get used to all the different powers and the different synergies and auras and abilities, and make sure I keep them all together and make sure I keep track of all of the different units that are going in there. So yeah, like I said, it's going to take a bit to get used to. It's going to take some work to get used to. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to be good, and we'll see what I can do. You know, like I said, I think it's going to take some honing and figuring out. But at the end of the day, I feel pretty strong about their abilities to do well, and we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, so I hope that made sense. You know, I'm still kind of trying to process it, trying to get together, and then take that information and process that away so that I can go into the tournament in a bit to try to do better again. And we'll see how it all turns out. The reason I guess I didn't get much. I got the drive rushes on him, but the reason I wanted to work on it was because I was tired of painting some Genestealers for a bit. I needed something different, so maybe back to a little power armor is not a bad thing for me. But yeah, before I go though, I do want to say thank you to everybody and everybody who's helped support this channel, even by watching this. The messages that people send thanking me, thank you for everything, and it's a lot of work that goes into the channel. So knowing that there are people out there who really appreciate what it is that I'm doing, it helps a lot. And all of my Patreons on there helping to support me, and putting money to help support me is incredible, and it really does help me. And thank you to the Army Painter for helping to support me with providing me with the materials to keep painting the endless list of models that I keep building for the channel and for everything else. So thank you to everybody. But I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. I certainly have. I have been Phil the Glacial Geek as always. And until next time, have fun.